Hello, and thank you for taking a moment to watch my detailed walk around of the 1989 BMW 325i convertible that I have for sale, also known as an E30 chassis. So I'm just going to walk around from a distance and give you a quick look at everything, and then I'll go into a little bit more detail on it all. Overall, a very nice example of what is really a 30-year-old car at this point, although not perfect, and I'll get into some of the details on that. So, to start off, I'll go ahead and start it up. All the lights do work, as you see, except for the brake lining indicator. There is a short in that wire somewhere, so I actually just pulled out the light bulb on that one. But I figured that's not something that's going to be one of the more crucial things. As you can see, while it's not quite up to temperature, it does run smoothly. It has 185,000 miles on it. And for those of you that are not familiar with the way that the E30 dash is set up, you see that check light going on, and it actually lets you know to check some of the other indicators. And the only reason why that brake light is on is because I have not hit the brake yet, which I just did. You see that light turns off, and this one goes away as well. Now, kind of going through the interior a little bit. It is a manual transmission, and you'll notice there's aftermarket steering wheel with M-color stitching, which also matches the suede on the shifter and e-brake boots with, again, the same stitching pattern on it. This is a weighted shifter from Garagistic with a Z3 shift lever in it, and also a polyurethane bushing, again from Garagistic. So all of that makes for some really nice, crisp shifting. Going back to the instrument cluster, one of the differences between the M cars and the rest of the E30s is the M cars have red indicators on the cluster. So I went ahead and just updated that, painted those myself. And then going back through, one of the big things too with a lot of these older cars is many dashboards are cracked. And as you see, there are no cracks in this dashboard whatsoever. Going back to the center console, again, everything works, be it the defroster for the rear, hazard lights, the onboard computer, which if you're not familiar with the onboard computer on some of these, they do have some different options. Some of the E30s only have a clock here. This not only allows you to keep track of your fuel consumption, time, clock, anything like that, but also has the ability to disable ignition. So especially if you're driving around and you have your top down, you don't want to put the top back up to truly lock everything, you can actually put in a code at the time, and unless somebody knows the code and enters it properly, even with the key, they will not be able to start the car until putting the code in. AC and everything works. Heater works, has a new heater core. The AC system has been upgraded to R134. Notice a Pioneer aftermarket head unit. It is a Bluetooth unit, so you have the ability to put in either auxiliary or play through USB, or connect directly to Bluetooth as well. But you'll find that there's no CD player on this unit. I just found that why go have the extra cost, the extra weight, the extra size, when it's not something that, at least myself, I'm using very much anymore, and I think most of you will probably agree with that in your own lives as well. Again, everything works, AC, heater, so on and so forth. Now, if I step out, you'll find that everything's here, all the plastics, all the bezels. This is actually a brand new kick panel. The center console is a new unit. Again, it's all here, including a windscreen, especially for, if you want to keep your ride a little bit quieter or cooler days, I actually drove this car up from Southern California to my new residence in Washington between Christmas and New Year's of last year. There's still snow on the ground. There's times that the temperatures are approaching 30 degrees. With my seat heater on, my air heater working, and the top up and windows up, I was as comfortable as can be with just pants and a sweater. So that being said, some of the bads when it comes to the interior, you'll notice that there are seat covers on here. Not the worst, but of course that means that the leather underneath needs some repair. The rear seat as well, while not as bad, does have some cosmetic issues as well. But for a 30-year-old car, I'd say that's pretty good. And again, I don't think I'm asking an outrageous price for this vehicle, especially comparing to, you know, the E30 M3s. If you're just trying to get a rough example of one of those, you're looking at $40,000. I'm obviously nowhere near even half that, because again, I do realize this is not an M3. However, there are only so many convertibles on the market. Let's go underneath the hood. The engine itself is essentially stock. See if I get some notes out here, just make sure I give you as much detail as possible. So again, the engine itself is pretty much stock. I did remove the oil pan just to make sure that there wasn't a whole lot of sludge built up in there. While I was in there, I also went ahead and put a windage tray and upgraded the baffle, both from Ireland Engineering. For some of you, you may be familiar with the head bolt issue, which some of these cars have had, and as far as I can tell is the only issue that these cars have had from a solid engine for me, where the original tops of the head bolt would actually snap off. So I went ahead and got ahead of that, already updated those to the I believe is a 12-point design that they came out with later. I also did drop the transmission, honestly, because I was swapping out all the fluids on this car and swapped it all out with synthetic. And I made the classic blunder of draining the fluid before making sure that I can actually remove the filler cap, or the filler plug. And I actually had to remove the transmission in order to finish that job. While I was in there though, I went ahead and replaced the rear main seal as well as the clutch. Other maintenance that I did as soon as I bought the car is the timing belt and water pump. We're done at 160,000 miles. And as you might have noticed earlier, we're currently at 185,000 miles. So still quite a bit to go on that. Spark plugs are also updated, and as I mentioned, all the fluids in the drivetrain from the engine all the way to the differential were replaced, and replaced with synthetic fluids where that counts. As far as suspension goes, you'll notice that there is a strut tower brace, again from Garagistic. At the time when I purchased it, I was living in the Westminster and Huntington Beach areas of California, and that's basically where they're based, right there on the border of that. Also H&R lowering springs, which were matched with Bilstein shocks. From Garagistic, updated the transmission and motor mounts with their HD rubber system with aluminum caps on the transmission. So just trying to stiffen everything up, but at the same time, there is no vibration into the cab whatsoever. Sorry, just going through my notes here. The steering has also been upgraded. I think it was one of the best upgrades that I did. It's been the rack has been swapped out from a Z3. While I was in there, I did a new control arm, or replaced both the control arms on that inner and outer tie rod ends, and also went to Siki for his steering conversion kit. One of the things I like about the way that they do things, is obviously there isn't an engine swap in here, but he goes the extra mile. If he was doing an engine swap, he actually takes the engine out of the vehicle and does a 3D scan of the area that he's working with, just to make sure that everything works out. So I was just very impressed with how they did things. It's a solid piece and very nicely machined. Also eliminates the bushing that is in the stock steering, so great steering response, great road feel through the steering wheel without any harshness. It's really a pleasure to drive, more so than it was before. I think I went through the interior pretty well. As far as the exterior goes, button this back up. So it was painted at some point, but the steering is not, or excuse me, the exterior is not mint. Again, part of the reason why I'm not charging a very, very high price for this. As you can see, there are some chips in the front. This is the worst of it, in my opinion. And you'll also see that there is some cracks in the panel underneath as well. My plan for this, if I was to keep owning it, was to do a facelift on it. The reason why I am actually getting rid of the car, since we went into that, is that I am using this as a daily driver, and I'm an outside salesman, and that just kind of breaks my heart to put so many miles on this car. But going back to the exterior itself, as you can see, the bumpers have been painted black, kind of match the rest of the black on the theme, and tucked in, both front and rear. Going back to the front, notice that there is an angel light kit. So go ahead and turn that on for you real quick. So there you can see them just in the parking light mode right now. To go along with that, the tail lights have been updated to something that looks a little bit nicer and smoked as well. And of course, 17-inch X6R wheels in that classic BBS style for the period. And around those are Nitto Neogen in a 215/40/17. And I find that you can take this into a corner and, without being too crazy with it, you can take it into a corner and just stomp on the gas, and there's enough traction to just pull you all the way through. It just handles like it's on rails. Again, between the suspension and the steering, it's a lot of fun to drive. Now, some of the downsides, which we already went into the worst of, in my opinion, when it comes to the front. Just do a little bit closer of a walk around. See, there are some imperfections. I'm not going to claim that this is a perfect car. Some more here. But overall, and I think I'm sure I've said it already, for a 30-year-old vehicle, this is a great example of an E30 convertible. And while I have moved up to Washington, this vehicle has not been driven on the snow. So I'm sure you're probably curious to see what it looks like with the top up, so let me go ahead and do that for you. At this point, let me go ahead and say that I also replaced the top on this. They got the top from Bavarian Auto, and at the same time I replaced all of the seals from the back of the window all the way around the front, and of course all the way around the other side. And there are a couple of small chips. They've been in there since I purchased the vehicle. They have not gotten any worse. Again, very nice car, very fun car, fairly unique, especially being a convertible. And I'm kind of sad to see it go, but like I said, it just does not make sense to me to put so many miles on a car that you do not see very often, and probably, in my opinion, one of the funnest cars to ever drive. Give you a little exhaust here, or a little blip here for an exhaust note. Not very loud, but a good note nonetheless. You see there's still some condensation coming out. I don't, as I said, I try not to drive this very much. In fact, I've been driving my Jeep over there more than this lately. Anyway, if you have any questions, feel free to look at the advertisements for the vehicle. The links to the ads are in the description below. And again, happy to give you any information you might be interested in.